Today, we're gonna be having a Chinese lesson.
No.
You didn't know I could speak Chinese, did you? I can't. But it just so happens that God provided me a partner who does. But what I would like to do is to kind of set a foundation for what Peachy's going to share with us. I remember one day, I guess maybe a year or two ago, the pastor came running to us very excitedly, asking us if it was true that in the Chinese written word that the number 8 was included in that word, because he was just amazed, that the word boat would include the number 8, and he was thinking, I was like, that has to do with Noah's Ark. And Peachy looked at it and said, that's exactly right. And that started, my mind thinking a little bit. I've been milling over this for a while, and I know that Peachy has always had an interest in calligraphy or Chinese writing, and she comes by it naturally. Her father was, I can say this pretty confidently, was a scholar. He read books, that just as today language is changed. You read the King James Version compared to today's writings, language has changed. The word awful has a completely different connotation, King James to today, or the word awesome. That those words change. Another one would be the word gay. That word is changed diametrically. So what we're going to do is, in Chinese writing, they had, how many have ever played the game, what is it? Yeah, hang on just a second here. I wrote it down because I knew I was going to forget. Pictionary. Have you ever played that game, Pictionary? They have an easel or a whiteboard or something, and you can't speak, but you can only draw pictures and kind of gesture and stuff. And then they have to try to guess what the thing is that you're trying to tell them, a phrase or a thing or something. Have you ever played that game? It's interesting. Well, Chinese language is kind of like the written word is a picture that describes something. It's a drawing, if you will, that illustrates something greater. Now, Peachy's gonna come up here in just a few minutes and share with us. But this text that we read from Isaiah 49, that word sinem, does anybody understand what that word means? It's a very unusual word. It's only used once in the Bible. And it means the extremity of the known world, or China. It depends on which concordance you go to. It means the furthest extent of the known world. So we have, where's east? East. And then we have the Middle East. And then we have the Far East. Do you get the illustration here that they used? This is explaining the furthest reaches of the known world, and China happened to be that. Now, where are we going on this? China is one of the largest ethnic groups in the world. It is 1/5 of the population of the world. That's pretty big, isn't it? It is also the most spoken language and used more on radio and internet today than any other language. Did you know that? The Chinese and the Jewish people have the earliest or the oldest civilizations as far as recorded history. And it was, and the Chinese have had about a 4,500 year of written history. That's a long time of written history. And now you go back in your family lines, how far can you go back? I doubt many of us could go back that far, can we? Now, how did the Chinese come to be where they are at right now? Well, it all started at the Garden of Eden. And the world waxed wicked. God brought a flood. And 8 people were saved on a boat. And when they got off the boat, God gave them a sign of the rainbow. And from those 8 people that got off the ark, they began to repopulate the world. Now, they started to migrate. And some of these people ended up in a place called Babel. And they began to build a tower. And the Bible tells us that God came down to see what they were up to and saw, what they were doing. And he destroyed the tower and he confounded the languages. So the Bible tells us that they all spoke a common language. Now, the Bible also tells us that in the days of the end, it will be much like in the days of Noah. You can get out your little phone here, and they got a little translate little button that you can push, and I can talk English, and I can talk to somebody in Chinese. We can communicate through a computer. We're getting to the place now where it's almost getting back to that, with mathematics and computing and stuff like that man is almost to that same point again. And would you say that the wickedness is almost the same as it was then, from what you read? I mean, it's people are slaughtering people because they have a wrong kind of a flag on their car. They're celebrating a Puerto Rican holiday, and they pulled out of their cars and gunned down in the street. They didn't know these people from anybody. They didn't like the flag or something. What kind of wickedness is that? This is where the world is going. So, why did God confound the languages? He wanted to disperse the people, didn't he? Well, as we read, and you can read in Genesis, it talks about in Genesis 10:17 that the people began to disperse, and you had the Canaanites, and you had all the different family members of Noah, and out of his sons, one of them was Ham. And the Canaanites came from there, and also the Chinese. Now, the Chinese, they had several different groups. In other words, they went to Mesopotamia, and then some of them stayed there, and some of them continued on to where present-day China is. Am I right so far, honey, or close? We often think about when you're a Chinese, or when you think about Chinese, do you think about Christianity normally? You would think about Taoism, Buddhism, Confucianism. Is that right? They have Chinese there, but they're an oppressed church in China right now. But did you know that the Chinese at one time worshiped the one God, the Creator God, before Taoism, before Confucianism, before Buddhism? That may be shocking to some of us. It was interesting to me. And what Peachy's going to do is she's going to walk us through some of these words that we find in the Bible, stories that we find in the Bible, that you'll recognize the way these words are combined. In other words, they take a series of images and they combine them into a word. And when you dissect, take apart the word, you see the story of the Bible illustrated. And this is fascinating. That thank God he sent Peachy to me, the openness to me, because I never would have found this on my own. So, Peachy, would you like to share with us?
Good morning, church, and thank you for giving us this time. I want to clear something. Back in the 2500 BC, the Chinese words were written words was already existing before the Egyptians, their pyramids and everything. So the Chinese history goes way, 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 way back. If you really study the history, it will show you, and you could do that on your own too. And back in, may I have those? Yes, please. I need to show everyone the reason what Frank was saying. If you look at these pictures here, the first column, second column, and the third column, and if you look at the picture, first one is what? Just make a guess. It looked like a fish. And then the bottom, that's where the Chinese character, I wouldn't say evolved, but they draw the picture. It's called a pictogram. Initially, those were drawing on like the bone of dead animals, or like, basically it's that. And so they draw, that's how they communicated. And then later they change, modify it into Chinese direct translation will be like an elephant words and character. But it doesn't have to do with the elephant. It's just the way the character, it's more like a single, like the stickman. It's that kind of wording, okay? But if you look at, first one is the fish. Second one, very obviously that in the middle, that's bird. The third one, that happens to be goat or lamb. Depending on how you add another adjective to it. So, because of the horn, you look at the last column, and you go down first, second, third one. You see a little dark picture. It has a horn and a face. And that's how they used to communicate. So that's one of it. That's the way the Chinese people started, way, 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 way back. Do I have another one? I think I have two. Okay. Now, this one, if you look at the picture on your right, it's a man kneeling down. He's looking up. And then by him, in front of him, that's altar. That put together, that becomes God. You only do that. You kneel down and worship God only. And God is only one. There is no other. So I want to show you that that's how the Chinese came about. What I'm going to show you here is a little different. It's just, it's much later time, but you get the drift from this picture here. And I need to tell you, way back in 2,500 years ago, there was a man, and I don't know if I even, his name is Sima Qing. he lived, let me show you, he lived between 135 to 86 BC, so that was a long, long time ago. And he wrote in one of his writings, and I can only translate to you, this is not my translation, someone scholar translated. Of all in the beginning, there was the great chaos without form and dark. The 5 planets had not begun to revolve, nor the 2 lights to shine. In the midst of it, there exists neither form nor sound. If you think about it, isn't this what the Genesis is talking about? It really is. And yet, the Chinese, they weren't beginning, like most of language is by word of mouth. And as you pass on, something do change. Whereas Chinese, they had the writing, so it was more accurate. And whatever it's written, that's what it is. And when you read it, you will know that's what it's all about. So,
Peach, I'd like to just, this idea of at the Tower of Babel, why they were rebelling against God. But God did not leave man without the revelation of true worship. Then when they left the Tower of Babel, they took this information with them, and the Chinese as well had this information with them, and we see it recorded in this writing. So I want you to see that in the book of Romans in chapter 2, it talks about that God is no respecter of persons, that God judged people by their conscience, by how they lived. And that the Jews had the law, but they didn't follow it. So did they get righteousness by that? No. But the heathen, they didn't have the law, but they obeyed their conscience as God gave it to them, and God counted that as righteousness. So God in his mercy is presenting what true worship looks like. And the Chinese, they carried this with them to their land from the Tower of Babel. So this goes way back. Go ahead, Peachy.
I need to finish reading this. In the second paragraph, this man have written is, "You, O spiritual sovereign, came forth in your sovereignty, and first did separate the impure from the pure. You made heaven, you made earth. You made man, all things become alive with reproducing power." That's also written in Genesis, when God created all the living beings, and he told them to go multiply. And he blessed the man, did the same. So now I'm going to take you back from the Genesis. The first, you already opened.
Yep.
This word, I don't know if they can
Zoom in on it.
Zoom in? Thank you. Sorry. This word, I know you don't understand, but what it is, it means create or creation, to make something happen. But what I'm trying to show you is that this has 3 different components, different words in itself, to make up one word. And the first one is this word. This part actually is this, meaning cow, moo cow. And if you read in the back in the Israelites, when they were doing the sacrificial, they used bull, they also used lamb. So this is part, but this is a cow, moo cow, or bull, whatever you want to call it. It's cow, okay? This is a mouth. Chinese draw a mouth, and that went to become a square opening. That's a mouth. This part, it looked like a snake to me, but it's a moving. It's like a person that is actually moving. This is the leg and the right leg. So that become moving part. It shows the symbolic of something is moving. So even if you don't understand Chinese, if you see this part, you will know something has to be moving. Okay? So that's one of it. Very easy in that way. So it becomes the creation. And that's found in Genesis 1 and 2. This word's a little complicated. It's called the garden, but we call it yuan in Chinese. It consists of dirt. This part is a dirt. So whenever you see this, it's a dirt. It's a earth. You can dig up and play with it. And that is still the mouth. And then this part is very interesting. This is a person. This a person leaning. There's a two-person, and then it's surrounded. It is the garden. And that's found in Genesis 2:15. I can read it to you. Then the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to tend and to keep it. And then Genesis 2:22, God said, the Bible said, then he took the rib which the Lord God has taken from the man, he made into a woman, and he brought her to the man. And that's Adam and Eve. And they live in the Garden of Eden. These words. This is called lan. Lan means greed or lust or what was
Selfishness.
Yes, selfishness or whatever you want. It's all that in that group. There's a two tree in the garden. One is a tree of life, one is a tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And here, this word is a tree. It actually evolved from the tree like this. And then it became this way, and then down. So this is a tree. If you look at these words, you will know in Chinese. And there are a lot of words that come with it like this, or they have other words that attach to the side. You know it has to do with a wood or a tree. So there was a two tree. This word is a woman. Chinese word for woman is this word. So the woman saw two trees or in with it, but she saw one that was very tempting or desirous. So it became Genesis 3 verse 6, which says, so when the woman saw that the tree was good for the food, that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree desirable to make one wise, she took of it fruit and ate it. She also gave to her husband with her, and he ate. Lan, greedy, desirous, lust. And what was you saying? The other word.
Yeah.
So, and this word tells you the story of what happened to Eve. It's simple as that. This is a very good word. It's called sacrifice. It's lot more in here. And I'm going to dissect into different parts. Sacrifice. In 1 Peter 1, verse 19, it says, but with the precaution, I can't even read my own words. I'm sorry.
Peachy, try this. Peachy.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Try
No,
this.
no,
This
no,
might
this
help.
one. I got it up here, I'm sorry. But with the precious blood of Christ, as a lamb without blemish and without spot, and Revelation 13, verse 8, it says, "And all who dwell on the earth will worship him whose name have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world." The reason I'm telling you this, because I'm going to separate this. Now, first words on your left side, this is niu. That means cow, moo cow again. This part up here, this is a lamb, the goat, just like earlier before. In the sacrifice in the tabernacle, sin offering, and Jesus is the ultimate Lamb of God who slain from the foundation of the world, is the bull and the lamb. This word show, meaning perfect. It could mean beautiful. It could mean excellent. So this is group of perfection, perfect. This words right here, it's a knife or whatever you use to kill the animal. Spear,
Spear or knife.
Yeah, knife. And when you put all together, it becomes a sacrifice. Isn't that amazing? I mean, I was even amazed. And I have to go back and study and look at it and make sure this is not something that somebody's making up. Genesis 4, verse 4, it says, "Abel also brought to the firstling of his flock and of their fat, and the Lord respected Abel and his offering," because Abel gave the correct sacrifice, not like Cain. This word, it's called to prohibit, to forbidden. It's a forbidden. 禁. It has tree, but it has two trees. These words came from an altar, like what we saw earlier. It was just a plain altar that evolved into this. It's to show, to demonstrate, or to reveal. So when you put two together, God did tell Adam of the two trees, and all the tree you could eat, but the one, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, thou shalt not touch. So therefore, he already told them. So they didn't really have any excuse to go over there to even, do whatever. But we know the story. Eve did eat that fruit. So he forbid them to do that. And that's the forbidden. And I often wonder, why is it two tree? And then this, to make a forbidden, now I understand. Because there was two tree in the garden. This is the one, and I really need to thank our pastor, because he is the one that came to us with these words and showed me, and he wanted to know if it was true. And initially I'm thinking, what? But this is true. This word meaning boat, the definition, the translation is a boat. You could say it could be boat or ship or a freightliner. The Chinese character for this one, this alone is a little boat. You know how the little boat in the back then, they didn't have it. Yeah, it's a rowboat. But even before that, there was just a
paddle
oar. Yeah, and they just used that. That's what that is. And then that changed to, and this part is this. And I guess this is two-person. But this is the part he wanted to know. This is number 8. That is a real Chinese in number 8. If you ask any Chinese or Japanese even, how you write 8, they will write this, 8. And again, this is a mouth. So what does this mean? There were boat and there were 8 mouths, which means 8 persons in that boat. Genesis 7, verse 7, it says, so Noah with his sons, he had 3 sons, and Noah, that's 4. His wife, that's 5, and his sons' wives, added to that 3, equals 8, went into the ark because of the water of the flood. Now, sometimes the Chinese people will say it's a square because they describe ark being square. So they will write one word here, 方舟. That means square boat. But in translation, it is the ark. This really intrigued me. We wrote this word since we were tiny little kid. We learned in grammar school or first or second grade. I never thought about it. This is my last presentation. This is called ta. Ta. Chinese have a, if I say my name, Xu, it will go Xu, 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 Xu. There's a 4 sound. It almost sounds like you're singing something, but it is not. Ta, ta. It's not ta, 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 ta. So anyway, so this is a ta. This means tower. How did they build tower back then? They used the dirt or clay or earth, and they used some straw or grass or whatever they can hold of it to make a mortar or make the brick or whatever. Even the Egyptian in Israelite in Egypt, they did that. So this part is a dirt. This part is grass. If you ever see any Chinese character with this character on it, you will know it's related to flower or grass. So a lot of your flowers' name have this on there, on top of it. Even a vegetable, some of the vegetable like tomato, it has this on it. And then this is a people, a person or a people. This is 1. Chinese, we saw 8. This is 1. 2 will be 2 line. 3 will be 3 line. 4 is a little different, and so on. So I just want you to know, this means 1 unit. And a mouth, again. So when you put all this dirt, grass, people, and 1 unit in unity, or a mouth or a language, it becomes a tower.
Tower of Babel.
Tower of Babel. They were 1 language until God confined them. So this tells the story of Tower of Babel. And in Genesis 11, verse 1 and 4, it says, now the whole earth had 1 language and 1 speech. And verse 4 says, and they say, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower whose top is in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth. Now, I didn't come up here, and Frank was wrong to say that we're going to have a Chinese lesson. What I'm trying to show you is that I often wonder, do Chinese, Japanese, especially Chinese, because a lot of Japanese and Koreans are all descendant from China. And I often wonder, do we even have a chance? Chinese people ever have a chance to know God? Because all I know growing up, it's either spiritualism, Taoism, Buddhism, or Confucianism. That's it. We study everything of that sort. Nobody talk about religion as in Christianity. And I was really saddened by that thoughts until I went into and started to dig into this. And it's amazing. God is God of fair. God is God of love. God is God of for every nation, every people, every kindred and people. It is true. Chinese has no excuse not to know God, the sovereign God. And they did. They believe in it. Back in 2500, before Confucianism came out, or Taoism, or the Buddhism came, people knew there was only one God. There is no other. And we call it 上帝. We still do, 上帝. And then sometimes they call it 天, 天 meaning heaven. 天 has a word that means big, most biggest. And then on top of it is another line, which shows that beyond everything, he is it. He is the sovereign. And so it comforts me to know God is God of fairness. He allowed everybody to know him and to pass on to. And this is the words that we always write. If you ask me to write something about tower, I would use these words. There's no other for that. So I thank you all so much this morning.
Thank you, PG. In the book of Revelation, there's a message that goes out that goes to the children of God. And it says, I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell upon the earth, and to every nation, and kindred, and tongue, and people. Are you seeing it? God's word has been going out since the Tower of Babel. He didn't leave them orphans. He's been reaching out to mankind. He's been reaching out to you and I. And God has given us the privilege to extend this message to the world before he comes. Saying in a loud voice, fear God, give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment has come, and worship him that made the heaven and earth and the sea and the fountains of water. And there followed another angel saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all the nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. And a third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast and his image, and receive the mark in his forehead or in his hand, that same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture unto a cup of his indignation, and he shall torment with fire and brimstone in the presence of the angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment shall ascend up forever and ever. And they shall have no rest day or night, who worship the beast and his image, whoever receives the mark of his name. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. And then we also read in Revelation 18, there's another angel that comes down. And it says, after these things I saw another angel come down. Do we remember another angel coming down? Tower of Babel, do you remember? It's interesting how these things are all tied together. Here's another angel coming down, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried with a mighty and strong voice, saying, Babylon, Babylon is fallen, and has become the habitation of devils and the hold of every foul spirit and cage of every unclean and hateful bird. And all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth have waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye may be not partakers of her sins, and that ye may receive not of her plagues. That is a cry of a loving God, crying out to a world that's about to be destroyed. God has been calling for a long time. The promise went out in the Garden of Eden when he said that he would put enmity between the Satan's seed and God's seed. God has been crying out for his people. What is your decision today? Is God speaking to your heart? We heard Sandy sharing about her family, asking questions. The Spirit of God is moving. The angels are coming down and they're enlightening the world. And Babylon's about to fall. Choose this day whom you will serve, whether you serve God or you serve Baal. It's a serious time.